Nani ko lau poko I ke kaunga nau nā paliwi. E lele I tau apua ke ai kana he. O hala e nei nā puahi le ua o laniu. O pulu ia nā palai kanoe lani. O la ka aina I tau ai o la mai ka lewa mai. O la ka lehu I ka hana pono mai kai. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e.
Aloha. I want to welcome you to our virtual Canoe Fest here at Hakipu, Kualoa, where we'll have great guest speakers discussing many of the cultures here at Kualoa with canoeing, the history of canoeing, and the culture of canoeing. We really want to welcome you to this program. Mahalo.
So some of the, we might call them wahipana, is a Hawaiian term for significant sites. Of course, one of the ones that we just talked about was the boundary lines between the ahupua'a, and so we have an ahu that we've constructed here to kind of mark that line. Another kind of significant place, in this area is the fish pond, Moholy fish pond, and it's one of the larger fish ponds on Oahu. And one of the significant things about Moholy fish pond is that it's actually one of the only fish ponds that has been in continual usage from the time that it was originally constructed, which is centuries ago. And it still produces food. Now one of the big things that they're doing there is actually oysters. It's a little bit different type of food, than was traditionally grown there, but it's still a source of food. The peak that is kind of at the top of the ridge line, the Mo'okapu Haloa, is named Kane Hoalani, and of course, the name itself kind of speaks to the significance. Kane being one of the main four akua in the Hawaiian context, and then Hoalani is, means to be kind of like the pier of the heavens, and so Kane Hoalani is the peak in at the top of the mountain, the ridge line up there. On the Hakipu side, we also have one of the wahipana is called Nanahoa, which is the same name that other similar stones are called in different places. The most famous one, of course, is on Molokai, the Nanahoa stone, and that's the phallic rock, on Molokai. But in Hakipu, there's also a Nanahoa stone. And in some moolelo, it's actually connected to the fish pond. So the Nanahoa is obviously the Kane side, but there's a stone that is said to be in the fish pond walls that is a wahine stone. So you have it's a very traditional thing to have the Kane and wahine counterparts in there. So these are some of the significant places. There's another fish pond. Actually, there's a couple of different fish ponds more towards the ocean side of Kualoa Park too that are that are documented and are at least parts of them are still intact today too. But these are some of the wahipana, some of the significant places of Kualoa and Hakipu. Moholy Island is kind of iconic, yeah. So when people think of an island, in a sense, offshore island, even beyond Oahu, I think, even beyond Hawaii, you know, Moholy is the island that people think of, you know, and you know, it's um, uh, really beautiful, you know. Unfortunately, um, the name is not as familiar. People have kind of know it by another name, which we don't need to mention. But the actual name is Moholy. And you know, one of the neat things is that in this area, you know, I talked about Mo'okapūhaloa. You have Mo'oli'i, fish pond, and you have Moholy Island, which in you know in sometimes that Mo'o and the Moko, the K and the Okina in different areas of Polynesia will switch. And so all of them kind of have this, and sometimes they'll disappear, like in Mo'oli'i, sorry, and in Mokapu. You know, they all have the same root, you know, which is basically the Mo'o. And I think that, you know, that that's a part of this place too, you know, that tradition. One of the meanings of the word mo'o is the reptile. Yeah, so you know, you might use the term dragon. You know, it's kind of, and to me, it's an image that almost throughout the world kind of means the same thing. You know, you have that dragon, of course, in Asian culture. Obviously, you know, we have it in European culture too, throughout the world, basically. And to me, one of the things that is in that imagery and that's connected to this place is that idea of ancientness. You know, things that go way back. But connected to that also is that, you know, it's not just that they're way back, but they continue. You know, and they have that lineage. You know, that mo'o is the lineage there. So one of the, you know, important festival times traditionally was the Makahiki, and you know, in a traditional context, this was the time very connected to the Akualono, and in a lot of places, there was an image that was constructed, and it was actually carried throughout the islands, or throughout the island, I should say, and did like a circuit of the island. And Kualoa was one of the significant places in that circuit on Oahu. And you know, to me, that festival is a very important one, and one of the reasons why it's so important is because really it's built around, or it's, you know, it's placed around and focused on the productiveness of the land, you know, which is really the food, yeah. So it's in that time of year when you get the heavier rain, and that rain, you know, before our, you know, today we use irrigation and everything, but it's still actually dependent on the rain. But especially before, even more, you know, a lot of the traditional agriculture was dependent on that rain, kind of bringing that, you know, that nutrients during the Makahiki season. And so, you know, the whole season, which is actually you know, the whole thing is a 4 lunar month season, and there's many events inside of it in a traditional context. And one of the neat things, again, you know, pointing to how connected we are, is basically the same season as our festival season today. You know, so usually it would begin around October, November, which today we would call Halloween, Thanksgiving, yeah, and it continue all the way into February, March. Okay, so inside of that you got Halloween, Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, You got New Year's, and if you like go to February, you can join Valentine's Day, I guess, something like that. But that time of year, I think that time of year is shared amongst the whole world, and in the Hawaiian traditional Hawaiian context, that would be we would call it Makahiki, and really it's focused on the food, and again, it's focused on the food and the productiveness. Again, same, So today, when you think of Thanksgiving, it's the food. It's you have the images, the cornucopia. Yeah, you get all of these fruits, the pumpkins and the corn and all of that stuff. Of course, in Hawaiian it would be the kalo and the ulu and uala, and all of those things. But it's the food that's important. Yeah, and Christmas time it's the extras, right? And that was a part of Makahiki too. You had kind of all of the extra stuff too, including extra time, which was the sport. The competitions. You had the where people could kind of excel, at all of these different, and there's all kinds of different traditional Hawaiian sports that we're practicing that time. And, it's kind of celebrate, those things. So in the late 70s to the early 80s, there was a big Makahiki festival that used to happen in this area, and Key Project was a part of that. My parents and many of the people in the community were part of the organizing of that, and I kind of grew up. I was a pretty young child in that time, and they did it for I think about 4 or 5 years. It was really fun. I remember it. And so a little bit later, in the later 90s, I kind of helped to revive that Makahiki tradition, and so we did it every year. Here in this area right here, Hakipu Kualoa, and for most of that time we focused on the Hawaiian-based charter schools, so Hakipu Learning Center and several of the other charter schools, Halau Kumana and Halau Lokahi and Kamakau. Those were some of the schools that often attended, and this year's a little, the last couple of years have been a little bit different, and this year especially, of course, with COVID, But eventually I think we'll kind of reformulate, and regroup our Makahiki again. And one of the beautiful things is that, like hokulea, and kind of in that same time period, the Makahiki has been revived, and so one of the big ones is Moloka'i's Makahiki that happens every year. They really get involved with the school groups, and a lot of people come from outer island, usually again. Kaho'olave, from the 80s, has done Makahiki, opening and closing every year. I know there's ones on Hawaii Island and Maui Island and Kauai. I know of Makahiki celebrations on other areas of this island, on the North Shore side and Wai'anae side, and so throughout many communities. And so I think, like the voyaging tradition, that Hawaiian festival season tradition is another one that's being brought back, into our lives and to our calendars and all of that. One of the things too are the actual kupuna, who are in the land. And, one of the realities of Aina, especially close to the ocean, is that it changes and it erodes, and so one of the things that happens, regularly is you'll get iwi that are in areas that are eroding, and so the park has been very good about um, documenting and keeping those EV, and then our family, other families have helped with reinterment, and especially I think since the 90s, there was a federal legislation that kind of made it a little bit more regular, I guess, in a sense, the way that we care for what we call EV kupuna, yeah, which are the bones. And so if bones are exposed, then there's a process for reburial and getting the EV kupuna back to the aina, which I think is good. The hokulea is a revival of that voyaging tradition, yeah. And I think this area already had a connection to our older voyaging tradition, and I think that the launch of hokulea and then hokulea's continual return to Hakipu and Kualoa has really kind of anchored that tradition, and to me it's really important to see that connection to what was before, and then connection to what's coming up, and I think that's a great thing. History of hokulea, there's been a lot of documentation, which I think is really great, and from different perspectives too, of what was going on, and I think that all along the way, I think it's obvious that our kupuna are a part of what's going on, and I think that's powerful, for that to be continuing like that. I hope to see people, and families, and for myself, I hope to see our own families. Our families have been connected here for centuries, and I hope to see us continue to be a part of this place, and to continue to help to care for. I also hope that our families are not the only people here. I hope that we live and we grow as a community. I think those connections that we've been talking about, to voyaging and to food, are beautiful reflections of our past and present that I would like to see carried into the future and developed more. So to continue to revive that voyaging tradition. But I think I mean, we have the Va'a festival, which is really great, but we mentioned the Makahiki, and I think it's a good balance in a sense, because Va'a is about going, yeah. But you also got to have one thing is some place to go to, and when you go to a place or when you come back to a place, you got to eat, and when you live in a place, you have to eat. And so I think the traditions of food in this area are really there in our history, Yeah, parts of it are still here now. You know, we talk about the fish pond. We have some kalo, some ulu, some other food plants that are still here. But I think, you know, for me, I would love to see more food, you know, grown in this area, and food harvested from the ocean side too. You know, responsibly, managed well. So we're caring for, you know, those resources, and they can continue to be, you know, productive and to feed people. I think those are probably the big parts of what I would like to see. You know, I love to see the va'a, of course, as we all do, but I like to eat too, and you know, I think we all do too. You know, so those pieces I would love to see more of.
Aloha! I want to welcome you here to Kualoa Regional Park. I want to talk to you a little bit about our program, our Ocean Rec program. It's a great program where we reach out to the children of Oahu. We teach the kids many things. We teach them how to paddle canoe. We teach them how to sail canoe. We teach them the Makahiki games. It's a great place for them to learn the culture of Oahu. This place is a very sacred place, Kualoa. It's a wonderful place. It's a beautiful place where the kids can get in touch with their culture, their ancestry, and the aloha spirit that runs through all of us. One, two, three.